Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Reformed Dissenters, the show where Reformed Christians dissent against popular ideas of culture by asserting a biblical worldview. My name is Bruce Johnson. I'm joined today by my brother Jacob Johnson.
Hello, everybody.
And we're also joined by comedian, our favorite comedian, John Branyan, is with us today in virtual studio.
Finally made it. I don't want to mess up you guys' flow, but
mess with the flow. Go for it.
I got to tell the listeners that that these guys worked really, really hard to get me here today. I promised them that I would come on and do a recording last week, and I just completely forgot it. I'm not making an excuse. I looked at my calendar and it's like, oh, I got to be on the Reformed Dissenters. And that was the last time I thought about it. And so, So then I get an email from the guys and they're like, hey, we're in the studio waiting for you. And of course I didn't get that email until much after the time I was supposed to. And I'm like, oh guys, I feel so bad. I feel terrible. Let's reschedule. And they're like, okay, well, how about tomorrow? And I'm like, great, that'll be great. And then I forgot it again. The next day, you guys, I'm not even kidding. It was like, I felt awful. And it's like, I'm going to make it up to him. So I'm going to come back on the next day. And then I forgot it again. I stood him up again the next day after standing him up the first time. And so they were super gracious and super nice. And they probably wouldn't even said anything. That's the reason I'm saying it, because you probably weren't even going to bring it up, were you guys?
No,
you weren't even going to tell anybody. What a doofus I was.
Well, honestly really appreciate.
It's important to give a shout out to this, because this is what grace and forgiveness is supposed to look like among brothers, right? I mean, I would have done the same thing had you stood me up. I have a podcast. I know what it's like to have people forget and to stand you up, but that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it okay. And the listeners need to know that this is what's going on behind the scenes. So these guys are the real deal. I mean, they're not just saying this stuff because it's, nobody talks about Christianity because it's popular, but they're not saying it to try to win over. It's real. They were very gracious and they were very nice, and they weren't even gonna out me as being a moron.
Absolutely not.
But I was. And I'm happy to be
Well,
here.
Thanks, John. We really appreciate it. And scheduling stuff happens, and we've totally been there. So we were like, yep, probably something came up.
I need to make sure that this is clear. It wasn't that stuff happened or that there was a scheduling problem.
You could have taken that out. I'm just saying. I just gave you an escape route.
I need to be completely clear about this. It was not that I had a scheduling problem or something happened. It was just me being absolutely dumb and forgetful. So there we go.
Well, we'll put all that behind us, and we are just super, super excited to have you on the show today. We got so much to chat about. I can't wait. So yeah, let's just get into it. But before we start getting into all that stuff, we have a lot of previous episodes you can check out. Go to our show website, which is trdshow.net. Check it out. We got all sorts of stuff there. Send us an email, trdshow@protonmail.com. We'd love to hear from you as our audience. So so we have obviously John Branyan. If you haven't heard of him before, he is a fantastic Christian comedian. He's got all sorts of cool content. And just shrugging over there.
No. You haven't heard of me before. You are in the vast majority of humans on the planet.
Unfortunately, and we hope to remedy that someday. He's done tons of live shows. You did live shows for I think the past 2 or 3 Fight Left Feast conferences. So yeah, it's just, ever since we first heard of him, we were like, sweet, we got to get him on the show sometime. And we have. This is the 3rd time. So we're really excited.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So anyway, apart from just being a comedian, John is also extremely vocal about apologetics and Christianity and ultimate source of truth being the Bible. And not just in person, but online too, which is kind of stepping on a bee's nest there when you're Like, when you just get ganged up on because people don't have to see you face to face, so they can just hide behind their keyboards and gang up on you without even knowing who you are. So, if you follow John Branyan's Facebook page, which I highly recommend, it is super entertaining just to watch. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a sting operation, because he just kind of like goes into some of these posts, drops a bomb, like a 2-sentence or a 1-sentence comment, and then woof, it's just like he just kicked this beehive and they're swarming all over the place, and it just turns into this crazy, chaotic yelling fest. I don't know what. So we saw all that, and so we were like, hey, we haven't done an episode on online debating. Why don't we get like one of the world's foremost experts on the subject and talk to him about it? So here we are. But before we get into all that
guy wasn't available, and so they asked me to come and fill some time.
And here we are. So before we get into all that, we have to do what we always do, which is talk about our verse of the week. We've been talking about this verse all week long, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but we do have to bring it up again, because that's how our show works. We bring up our verse of the week, and we make the center of the show the Bible and the Word of God. So this week, our verse all week long, Monday and Wednesday, has been Isaiah 52, verse 7. And this verse says, "How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns." And again, that's Isaiah 52, verse 7. So again, just to reiterate, if you missed our Monday and Wednesday episodes, we talked a lot about this verse. There's so many different facets to it. Jacob delved into Paul's commentary in Romans on this verse. Paul brings this up and comments on it. And then on Monday, I talked a lot about how this connects the gospel message, the good news of salvation, to the result of that good news, and connects it to the overarching theme of the Bible, which is God reigns. So this is not just your typical limited, truncated good news of salvation and a non-life transforming salvation. The good news being talked about here is it's the good news that God reigns. It's the good news of the kingdom, the gospel of the kingdom. And we need to reassert that the gospel message that's preached today is a limited, truncated, shortened gospel that excludes the most powerful part of the gospel. You've been transformed to live for Christ. You've been transformed so that you can be, as James says, a doer of the word and not a hearer only. You've been saved for a reason, for a purpose, and that's to serve your king. And so this verse, I think, is just one of the many numerous verses throughout Scripture that reasserts the fact that the gospel is the good news of the kingdom of God. So we'll leave it at that. If you missed our Monday and Wednesday episodes, check those out. All right, so let's get into this. So what I've titled this episode is Let's Debate from a Comedian's Perspective. But one of the things that I've noticed is that comedy, it's... Okay, one of the first questions I have. How do you know, when you first see a post, and there's like a lot of good examples of posts that you've commented on. One of them is like, it's that Twitter page that's literally says God. And I think the comment was something like, "Oh, I love atheists because we don't need the threat of hell to be a good person." And then you commented, you're like, "Well, I love atheists because they can be completely antithetical to their own worldview in the same sentence." Like, it's like,
they can undermine their own position in a single sentence.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I guess my question is, what's your thought process when you see a comment like that? What do you think about before you comment? What's your thought process going on in your head to make a comment like that and to kind of put yourself out there in that way?
Well, I don't know. Everything is, as much as possible, I try to meet sarcasm with an equal amount of sarcasm. You know, my gifting, if you will, is that I have a mind that works that way. And so I've got a really sensitive detector of of sarcasm and satire. And so when the atheists, the godless people, the humanists, whatever you want to call them, the deconstructed Christians, they're all the same mindset. But when they start pushing their smugness, when they start trying to be funny,
yeah,
then it just does something to me. It just triggers something in me.
You're like,
And
ooh,
it's
two can play at this game.
Right. You're not going to be funnier. I'm going to come up with something that's going to be funnier. And
nice.
And that's the goal. I just don't have. There was a season long before you guys were born on the planet where apologetics and presenting our faith as Christians was it was gentler and it was kinder.
Yeah.
But that season is past, and if you try to go, particularly online now, and be gentle and kind, and if you try to respond to their questions, even the questions that you get asked are no longer legitimate. It's all a trap. And if you don't know that, if you don't know that, you wind up looking, you wind up getting torn apart. And so,
yeah.
Would you say that it takes you a long time to come up with a response like that, or is it very just like instant in your brain? You come up with a sentence and you throw it out there.
It depends. Sometimes it's right there. The wording is the tricky part, because I have an idea of how I want to respond, but then I have the challenge is to get it down to ideally to just one line, because that's easy to remember.
That's tricky to do.
And it's sharp, right? And so, and people don't have a long attention span. So if you write a paragraph to say a thing, they won't read it.
You're going to lose it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what makes your comments, like the pithiness of it, is kind of what gets the most response, because it's something that's quick, but it's potent. Like it's got a couple layers of apologetic responses built into it behind the scenes, where it's kind of like an onion, where it's like, all right, boom, that's there. And then you start peeling it apart. People start commenting. And what I love about that too is you get a lot of other Christians. I've seen more recently, a lot more Christians have started to support you on a lot of your comments. And so you'll give the big overarching, using the example from before, you'll be like, well, I love how they countermine, their own worldview in the same sentence. And people are like, oh, what do you mean by that? How can you say that? And then other Christians who understand that atheists have no ultimate source of truth, they can step in and be like, here's what he means. Here's the philosophical answer, and they can kind of take it from there, which is nice.
Right.
But,
yeah. Well, the thing that will happen when you start doing this is you will have some Christians, yes, who will come in and support you, and they're like, yeah, we understand what's going on. We'll tell you. But then there's other people who will accuse you of being unkind, and you just have to prepare for that. Yeah. You take shots. Our team will shoot at us when we are out there doing combat the way that that the culture is demanding that we do combat. There are still some people who go, well, you need to be gentle and you need to be kind, and Jesus was never sarcastic. And it's like, well, really? You know what? If you've got some time, I can show you where he in fact was pretty sarcastic. And
right. When you call someone a brood of vipers, that strikes me as just some of the nicest, softest language you could possibly use to describe a group of people. By calling them a brood of vipers.
The Pharisees.
Read Doug Wilson's book, The Serrated Edge, and you'll see a ton of examples of Christ using satire.
Yeah. And so if you have to be prepared for that, you also have to be prepared to just, and I don't always do this well. I don't do it like I should, but you have to make your statement. Bang! You fire your shot, and then you leave, because right, you leave, and I don't always do this. Because sometimes I come back, but you fire your shot, and then everybody gets in a whirl, and then you just leave, because there's nothing more that you can do most of the time. Those
Yeah.
people are going to come back, and they're going to be angry, and they're going to call you names. If you happen to be a comedian, they're going to assure you that you're not funny. They're going to tell
Right.
you,
They have to go for the ad hominem approach. Like,
right, they're going to tell you that you're not really a Christian. They're going to tell you that you're the reason that people aren't going to church. They're going to have all kinds of stuff that they
wow. So
say.
you've seen it all.
Yeah. And so I don't, like, I'll get the little notifications up in my my
Yeah.
little box there on Facebook, and it just goes bananas. I'll fire something, and I just know, okay, I'll give that about 10 minutes, and
Buckle
then
up.
it's just going to go bling, 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 and people are going to be talking to me, and I literally, I disappear. I don't
Yeah.
need to see it. And that takes a little bit of, when you start doing this for yourself, my friends and my brothers and sisters, this is what you will eventually have to do. You just have to let it go. You just let the heathen rage, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the chips fall where they may. So
what do you see as what's your driving motivation behind leaving a comment, stepping away? What is it that I mean, I happen to think that that's a great approach, and I have my own reasonings for why I might do that and why I have done that on certain posts. But what's your motivation and your reasoning behind leaving the comment and then not having to step back into the mud and, bog down in the mud with everyone else, name calling and all that kind of stuff? What does that do?
well, I one of it is just, it's just time. It's just there. I can't respond to everything.
Yeah.
And I have seen them. I don't need to respond to everything. Most of the comments are not even, they're not even coherent, and so there's really nothing even to respond to. They're just making noise. They're just
Yeah.
really, really upset. And so the other thing that occurred to me just a few days ago is that I think that Christian people, myself included, have had a kind of a wrong idea of what it means to plant seeds. Christians talk about seed planting all the time. I just want to plant seeds. I want to plant the seed of the gospel. And obviously there's scripture that says that that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to sow seeds. But I think that I have spent a lot of time um, not realizing that what I'm really trying to do is harvest. And so I say I'm planting seeds. I say, oh, I'm out there planting seeds. But what does seed planting look like? Seed planting is just poking a hole and dropping a seed in it, and right, and you're done. That's really it.
Yeah.
There's not much. There's not much to look at. There's really not much evidence that you've done anything.
Yeah.
It's not that spectacular. And I think that's what seed planting is. I think it is. I think it's just saying a thing, and maybe you just get everybody mad at you. Maybe everybody is just furious, and they think that you're a monster and a hateful, bigoted, demonic,
Yeah.
whatever. I can go on and on, and they're super mad at you. And it's like, maybe that's just the first step. That's just planting a seed.
Yeah.
And there's no fruit yet. There's not even a little green plant that I can point to and go, oh, see how God's working, because that's further down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, planting the seed, you don't know what's going to happen. And so I don't know if I'm right about this. Like I said, this is kind of a new thought, but I'm
just trying it out.
It's not very glamorous, reaping the harvest is more glamorous because you get to see, the fruit of all the work that was done.
Yeah.
And you get to go, hey, here's a new person that's coming, and the angels are rejoicing. And that's way more fun than having everybody yell at you. But
right.
I think
it's all part of the
interesting
process.
thing is that that's kind of by design, because then it's not on you to say, oh, look at this, I brought this person to church, or I brought this person into the Christian faith, I harvested this. You're just planting the seed and letting God do the rest. It's not you that did something great. It's God that made that seed to grow. But But yeah, I think that analogy, especially with the seed, works amazingly well because when you plant a bunch of seeds, you got to plant more than you think that will grow. Plant twice the amount that you want to get, because when you plant seeds, there is a large chance of one of them not coming up. So you want to plant more than able. So not every single time when you plant a seed will it sprout up and form into anything. But yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yep. Yeah, and that can be really comforting too. is that idea that, hey, you know, this isn't wasted. If I'm putting truth out there, if I am confronting, if I'm always ready to give an answer for the hope that's within me, but also you're pushing against the gates of hell. The Bible talks about that the gates of hell will not prevail, and that's defensive. They're on the defense. We are on the offense in Christ. Christ is on the offense. He has the sword coming out of his mouth. His robe, dipped in blood. The armies of heaven are following him, and he's reigning now, and he's conquering this earth and taking dominion. And so, but that dominion looks very different than we expect it to, So maybe it is, you're just leaving a comment, but then that gets other Christians to think too. And maybe other people who see the reactions and the flurry and the gunfire and the smoke and the insanity. These people just like devolve into chimpanzees and start throwing stuff at the wall. And
Right.
people see that. And it's like, what the heck? Why are they acting so insane for no reason? That's weird, like, I wonder why they're doing that,
Yeah. Well, it's in a way, I think it's a blessing from God, and I consider it kind of an honor. And it sounds weird to say this, but I do. When I am given the privilege of being able to drop some kind of a little seed that exposes the folly of humanism and godlessness, and they literally just make fools of themselves.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
all you have to do is stand back and let them go.
Yep.
It's
wind it up and then
yeah, you just let them go. They literally make fools of themselves. They contradict themselves. They undermine themselves, like immediately, and you don't have to do anything. They're so angry. I made a bunch of progressives angry when I went to there's a guy who draws cartoons, and he's used to be a pastor. He said he used to be a pastor, but he abandoned. He deconstructed his faith, and now he still fancies himself a pastor, but he just doesn't know what he believes anymore. So he's got a bunch of convoluted. And I asked him. He drew a picture of Jesus on the cross, and all of these people are gathered around him, and it says "all means all," and that was he goes, "This is one of my most popular cartoons. I haven't posted it for a while, but all means all." And it's these people, and it looks like a 4-year-old drew it. But what's he saying? What's he saying? Well, what is he saying? Because he's a deconstructed. He doesn't identify as a Christian anymore. And so what does that mean?
Right.
And so I just asked him. I went on his page and I said, am I mistaken in thinking that you don't identify as a Christian anymore? And that was an earnest question. I said, am I wrong that you don't identify as a Christian anymore? And his response is, "You're wrong about many things, and some things you're not." That was his response. But what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting was the amount of vitriol and anger that I got from the other people who were following his blog. This is an odd question to ask, and we don't need your bile and hatred here. Keep moving on. And I'm like, I didn't do anything hateful. I just wanted to know what the cartoon means.
Right.
Because if you're going to say that Jesus died for all people's sin, well, okay, we can, I would agree with that, to a point, but we can have someplace start. But you don't believe,
right?
You don't even walk with Jesus anymore. So why are you drawing this cartoon? It doesn't.
Right. You're trying to like peddle some Arminian theology, And it's like, well, we can't even have the Calvinist versus Arminian debate because you don't even claim to believe that this book that you're deriving this theology from is real or
Right.
is actual truth. Like, yeah.
Well, he's claimed many times that he's not a Christian. He doesn't walk with Jesus anymore. Today he released a cartoon that is him. This is my history walking with Jesus. In the first panel, it's him and Jesus. And then in the second panel, it's him and Jesus, but Jesus is a little faded. In the third panel, Jesus is really faded. He's almost just an outline. You can barely see him. And the guy looks angry. And then in the last panel, the guy is smiling like he's happy again. And Jesus is completely gone from the picture.
Wow.
And this is the guy who is saying all means all, a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And so you put those two up next to each other,
Something,
and they're contradictory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's insane.
And so the point was that all I did was ask a question: Are you a Christian? And I just unleashed the fury of all of these people who felt like they had been offended by the audacity of me to even ask,
Right?
what his beliefs are. And so this is the
goodness.
culture that we're in now. You offend people by simply asking them what they believe.
Yeah. Yep. It's insane. We're postmodern, which I don't even know what this is called anymore. I think it's just literally called insanity. I don't know what
depravity.
I don't know what the philosophical word for the age we're in now, because we're past the postmodernist age where there was no objective truth, but also everyone's truth was their truth, which you can't. Anyways, we're past that insanity. Now we're just at the, who cares about that philosophy stuff? Now if you don't agree with me, I just hate you, and we're just going to go at it. And it's like, okay, we've just, all right.
Right.
So,
well, we're going to go at it, or we're not going to go at it, because I'm going to block you, and I'm going to throw you off throw you out of the conversation.
Yeah,
and that is a thing that's happening on both sides. Unfortunately, there are humans and the humanists and the pagans are doing that, but there are a lot of Christians who are doing that as well. There's a lot of particularly more gentle and conservative type people who will not tolerate any sort of hostility or heated debate. They won't tolerate it, and they're like, no, we're going to have to start blocking people for their opposing views. And I got into it with a guy who's on my side. I think we're pitching for the same team, but he was blocking the dissenting views, on his wall because he thought they were heretical, and he thought that they were leading people astray. And I said, as gently as I know how, I said, I just disagree. I think that you've got to let people express their points of view, even if they're wrong and you disagree with them, so that you can correct them. Right. Because you can't correct somebody when you censor their comments out of existence.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, indeed. Well, this was a really interesting conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. Jake, you got any final questions, remarks before we wrap up?
Something that I did want to just say, it isn't necessarily a question, but comments are welcome on this. But there was an NBC interview with Doug Wilson that was like viral, that everybody probably has watched by now. But they had like this post after the interview they did with Doug Wilson and everything. They had like this post conversation and discussion between themselves, and they were the one person who she claimed to be a pastor, and she was saying that in the Bible, even Jesus said people can follow him, but then they don't have to follow him. He gave people a choice. They don't have to follow him, or they could follow him if they wanted to. So basically saying, whatever. If people want to follow Jesus, that's fine. If people don't, that's fine as well. But my immediate remark to it in my head was, oh yes, okay, right. Jesus did give a choice. It's either you follow him or you spend eternal damnation in hell. There's your choice. There's your binary
You got a
choice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, you are free to spend eternity by yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
you have that choice.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That sort of talk will get you into trouble too, Jake. Online.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good thing I didn't
that
have an
sort of
outlet
bigoted
to,
hate speech.
Yeah, yeah.
Bigoted hate
It's a good thing I didn't have an outlet to actually post anything like that.
Yeah, some of these people, it's just like, why did your parents let you on social media?
Yeah.
You
Well,
obviously
that's a-
weren't ready for this.
That's a whole discussion in itself.
Hey, that'll be our next
Why?
conversation.
Why are you on social media?
Yeah, right. Yep. Sweet. Well, thank you, John. We really appreciate chatting with you, having you on. Glad it worked out in the end, and we're looking forward to chatting with you again sometime in the future. This was really
Absolutely. Anytime, guys.
cool. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all so much as our listeners for watching or listening to us today. Don't forget, trdshow.net is our show website. Send us an email, trdshow@protonmail.com. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And until Monday, have a great weekend. Have a great Lord's Day. And we'll see you on Monday. And remember, everyone, in all that you do, do it as unto the Lord.